Hello everyone, good afternoon. So how is your Saturday? So hope everyone have a great weekend over here. So welcome to APU live seminar session on post-COVID-19 higher education and career. My name is Long from Asia Pacific University of Technology and Innovation, APU. For those who had followed our seminar series, yes, again, I'm your host for today. So finance world at this era no longer the same as what we have used to have. Many traditional areas have been digitalized and automated. Like last time, we need to use cash to purchase product, but now we have touch and go e-wallet, we have Grab Pay, we have WeChat Pay. So, and a lot of time we no need to go to bank anymore. We need to go and queue up in bank. We just have to use our e-banking. So this is only small areas of fintech. Today's seminar session is going to tell you more about fintech and futures of financial services by Dr. Nafis, who is one of the top 100 fintech experts in the region. So APU is the first and only university in Malaysia offering fintech degree and also master program. So we're going to have another two more sessions coming up, which will cover in the field of digital marketing tomorrow and also actual on 15 July. So do visit us, our website at www.apu.edu.my, and also follow our Facebook page for more updates. You also can come and visit us today and tomorrow, 11 and 12 July, as we have open day from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. So now, without further ado, let us welcome Dr. Nafis. Hello, hi, Dr. Nafis. Can you hear me?
Hi Long, how are you?
Um, yeah, very good. So now over to you.
Thank you, Long. Good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to see you, all of you, on a Thursday afternoon. We are going to talk about the future of financial services. It's always difficult to predict a future, right? Nobody can predict a future with certainty. But at least for time being, people who are working in the financial services or who are driving the financial services can predict one thing for sure. The future of financial services is not going to be the same what we have been seeing for the last 2 or 3 decades. It's going to be transformed. And how it will look like, if you can see that the future of financial services is changing with the consumer expectation. Consumer expectation is the one which drives all the services within the industry, and financial services is also among them. Imagine what was the last time you have visited a bank, or when was the last time you have used cash. So these things are changing. Last time people used to hoard money, a lot of money in cash at the home. Later on, they transformed the money to put into the bank, and later on they were using cash also to pay for the services. Imagine those long queues into the bank in the branches. But what happened then? People stopped visiting branches. At the moment, we can see that people are very less frequently visiting banks. So this is how the banking industry or the overall financial services is going to be transformed. And I will take you through the journey as what's going to happen in the future of financial services and how fintech is going to drive that journey. So let's go through that journey with me for time being. Again, these headings looks very scary. Why robots could be the future of finance, and the finance jobs requiring AI skills increased 60% last year. So if you can see that one of my article which was published in World Economic Forum a couple of years back, I predicted this thing to happen. In fact, even though jobs in the banking are the most sought after, if you go into the US market and look at the survey, the people who are working into the business domain, the five most preferred job market or five preferred more companies are mostly in the financial services, in the likes of JP Morgan, Citigroup, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, and so on. So people have always aspired to work in the financial services. You must be wondering why, and that's no surprises. Money lies in the financial services. Everything what we are doing for our living is all about money. And where does the money come from? The more you work into the financial services, the more you demand the profit for the banking institution, the more perks you get. The people who are working in the banks can look into the higher perks depending on the area of specialization, especially when it comes to the investment banking. There is no limit of how much you can earn in the investment banking depending on what role you are playing. But again, at the same time, we can see that, like other industry, we have been talking about automation. Automation is going to be the future, right? Most of the time, we're talking about seeing the robots everywhere, whether it's in the marketing, whether it's in retail, whether it's in the industry, whether it's in a restaurant. Everything is being driven by the robots. Is it going to be the same thing for the finance? I think so. The reason why, because in the last year there was a one study done in the US market, and it found out that around 1.3 million bank workers will lose the job in the next 5 years if we are not going to reassign the skills to themselves. And what are those reskilling? Those are reskilling in the area of AI and machine learning. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, blockchain has been always related to the technology. And we look into the computing and technology industry, which will be driving those. But that was the old days. If you look into the intervention of the digitization in the financial industry, it's all going to take over by the robots and the automation. In fact, there was one recent report published by the economists who work in the Bank of England. has mentioned that almost 50% of the global finance job is going to die in the next 5 years. So what will happen that? Are the banks going to only employ robots? Definitely not. Are the banks going to die? Definitely not. Banks and financial services are going to be transformed. And so on, even the jobs are going to be transformed. So what we need to do that. And that is the whole purpose of this seminar. I'm going to take you through a journey and try to tell you that how the future graduates need to realign themselves with the requirement of the financial services industry. And keeping that in the perspective, the agenda for today's seminar will be looking at what is fintech. I believe many of us will not be even understanding what is fintech. So I'll give you a quick overview of the fintech. Then I will take you through what are the impact of banking and fintech impact on banking and finance, how it is impacting the overall financial services. And again, keeping that in perspective, how the future of banking and finance will look like. If we are looking about the sector, we also look at the people who are going to work in the graduates, the students who are learning now or who will be going to learn about the finance and accounting in the next few years. What lies ahead for them? Based on my previous slide, which I talked about, the jobs getting disappeared. Are you going to be irrelevant in the market? Definitely not. So we will see that what lies ahead for the finance and accounting grads. And finally, I will also mention that what APU has to offer in that regard. So let's continue. We started talking about visiting branches, right? In fact, the branch was already dying. If I look into the last year, before even the COVID strike, the people who are visiting the branches have been dropped by 36% globally. Why? Because most of the financial services can be done over the phone banking, can be done over the mobile banking, or can be used using your personal devices, just having an internet connectivity. So if you can see that this is a recent statistic. If I look correctly, it has been published only in the March of 2020. So 38% of the people are not even visiting at all, and the number of people visiting at least only once is 26%. So if you look into overall, two-thirds of the consumers are even not going to the bank, or even not, or maybe just visiting once. In fact, COVID-19 has further enhanced that feature. Why? Because there was no option to visit the bank because of the lockdown across the world. Within in Malaysia, across the world, most of the cities were under the lockdown. And during the lockdown, even the financial services, where the banks and the other banking institutions were closed down. So people don't have the option. It doesn't mean that banks stopped operating. Bank was still operating. So this is the thing which is going to happen now. People have started to live without visiting the banks. People are started to do the financial services sitting at home or at the offices. And this is going to be the culture in the years to come. So frequency of the consumers visiting banks are dropping drastically. And that gives an insight what is fintech. In fact, fintech is not a new term. Fintech is a combination of a word called financial technology and financial technology. So basically, we call it fintech. But fintech is not a new term, it's an old term. It was coined somewhere in 1992 by Cisco, but it never picked up at that point of time. Even though people were using ATM, people started to use mobile banking in the early 2000s and so on. But with the advent of the fintech or advent of the platforms which started to come into the financial services, fintech started to gain its name. And in the last 5 years, we can see that the interest have increased over the period of time. So if you are in the working in the financial services, if you are going to work in the financial services, and if you are learning about financial services, if you are not aware of fintech, you are missing a big puzzle from your side of the story. So you need to know what is fintech. So I will try to quickly go through what is fintech and how it is going to help that. So basically, fintech is nothing but a marriage of financial services and information technology. Technology has been always there. In fact, financial services, banks, accounting firm, financial advisory firm has been using technology. But technology always used to be the backbone or the back end of the services. But now we are looking at the front end. What is the front end? The front end is looking at the services which the consumer are expected to do. And basically, what are the things which we are going to do in the bank? Basically, the type of services we look in across the banks or the financial services. is one most common thing: payment. We take on lot of services, whether to order the food, whether to buy the goods, whether to buy the goods online for the houses, for the offices, for your any personal services. You require to do a payment. And how do you do the payment? There are multiple ways of doing the payment. You can do payment via your own banks, you can do payment through the wallet, you can do payment through the credit card, and so on. So the landscape of the payment has evolved. Investment used to be a very traditional activity until last few years. What used to happen in investment? People will go to visit to bank, they will talk to the wealth management customer service, they will talk to the investment bankers. If you have a lot of money, definitely, and then they will advise you where you can put your money, how can you create a portfolio, and what will be the best return you will get out of your investment. These days, people do not have that much time to go and talk to the human. So what's happening in investment fund? Robo advisory are coming. You just look at answer some questions. What is your risk appetite? What is your return appetite? And how much money you want to make in the next 6 months or the next 5 years? Based on that appetite, the robo advisory using the artificial intelligence and the machine learning will able to predict and give you some options. So investment is going to go over online. Everything is going to be advised by the robots. Definitely the humans will be needed, but bulk of the things, the data crunching will be done by the investment. Advisory, the same thing. It's all about giving you the best about what's happening in the financial services, where to invest money, what type of instruments want to take, and so on. Insurance is also taking a complete different picture. In fact, insurance became a very important thing, especially during the time of COVID-19, especially with the bankruptcy and the challenges which we are facing in the industry. So what's happening in the insurance? We are looking at a technology. The technology will tell you how often this person is going to involve in an accident. So is it going to be a person who requires insurance or who has to look into a higher premium, for example? It will all based on one thing which is called the big data. Every footprint what you do online at the moment, also if some of you are watching me online, this is also your digital footprint. Everything what you do online is captured as a digital footprint in the form of big data. And the companies who are looking at these data, especially Google, Facebook, and Amazon, they are trying to crunch this data to identify your behavior. So most of the time when you are on your social media, your Facebook and so on, you always see that something which you were talking about or something which you were thinking about or browsing about start to come up as an ad in your Facebook pages. What's happening with that? That all about the digital footprint. So big data is going to be the gold in the future. Every company need data, and that using that data, they can customize the services, the advisory, the information, the type of services anybody required. And eventually, we're looking also the financing. Financing, in the sense, it has been very traditional again. You have to go to the bank, you have to fill up lot of documents, lot of papers. You need to prove to the bank that you are going to be a very efficient paymaster. That means once you take up the loan, you are going to repay to the bank on a timely basis. And that's not going to be easy process. Amount of documentation, amount of the scrutiny it goes through, it takes a lot of time. So people are moving away from the traditional lenders like the bank. They are going into P2P. They are looking into crowdfunding. They are looking even at a non-banking platform which are providing financing. So these are the areas which is all across the financial services. So fintech is looking into that, and these are the key area where we are going to focus on the fintech aspect. I hope I'm making the things very clear to you. If you have questions later on, we can always go through those questions and talk about some of the companies name which you see here are the leading player across the different segments that I talk about. For example, Alipay is driving almost more than 60% of the payment in China, for example. Hekail is looking into the big data. Monexo and Lending Club is looking into financing across the Europe and so on. So these are the ones which are going to look into the financial losses. One thing which I forgot to mention here is about the open banking and the challenger banks. Open banking is where you don't need to have an account with a bank. The bank doesn't exist. The banking services is on the cloud. For example, you are going to use your digital footprint, what type of information is there, and the financial services will be customized to you. The new banks which are coming as the new entrant are called the challenger bank. These are the neo banks. They do not need to have big buildings, a big amount and numbers of employees, and you don't need to visit these banks. These banks are operating from cloud. So in fact, the banks as a physical is going to be disappearing, and that's what's happening in the fintech domain. Moving on, if we see that why fintech is growing now, not only the investors who are looking into to drive the fintech, we can see that there are a lot of investment coming from the venture capitalists, from the equity capitalists. These are the ones which are pumping the money. So if you have an idea, if you have a good platform and you are able to fulfill the service needed by the consumers, you can start a platform. And these platforms are the ones which are driving. Some of them I mentioned in my previous slide. And if you can see that the amount of funding coming to the fintech landscape, look at the growth. I will just look into in the last 2 years, for example, from 2017 until the end of 2019, you can see the amount of money invested into the fintech landscape have gone double from 26.65 billion all the way to 53 billion. And that money keeps on growing. I understand that the fintech investment by the VC has slowed down in the second quarter of 2020 because of the COVID. But definitely this is the space which is going to be look like. If you see some of the statistics coming from the leading financial services, for example, Goldman Sachs predicted that the worldwide pie of the fintech will be 4.7 trillion. It's a huge opportunity, not only for the fintech platform, but also for the user and the driver of the financial services. And if you look across the map, which I have showed at the bottom of my slide, you can see that there are more than 12,000 fintech startups worldwide. Again, I just want to highlight that we can have many fintech startups, and almost 80% of might collapse in after 1 or 2 years in service. But even though if you are looking at that, these 2 or 3 thousand of fintech are going to disrupt the overall financial services industry. They are going to be the leader. They are going to be the provider of financial services in the years to come. And this is why, because of the most of the consumers, especially the people who are going to be the next generation of the users of the financial services, people like you who are going to be the students who are going to work after in the industry after 2 3 years, when you start earning, you are not going to visit the bank. Millennials are the one who are going to drive the adoption of fintech. And at least 64%, which is almost two-thirds of the consumer, at least have used two or more fintech service platforms in the recent time. So you can see a huge opportunity there. And that is the sector which is going to drive the whole financial services industry. Now, looking at what's really happening, a lot of information are there. People are not using cash. I keep on telling about that the cash is becoming obsolete. Why? You don't have to carry a heavy amount of money into your wallet. In fact, by using just 2 or 3 cards in your wallet, or maybe not having any card, because if you can attach your cards to the wallet, your smartphone become like a wallet for you, and you can use that to do your payment. You can always look at the QR code. You can always go to the market where you can just scan the QR code and you can do the payment. If you're going through the toll booth, for example, they use the touch and go wallet. You have a RFID. You don't have to splash any card, and that is how it's going to drive that thing. So by 2020, by this year, 90% of smartphone users will have a mobile payment. And at least all of you who are attending the session now must have seen that you have at least used once or in this type of payment mechanism in the last few years. The other area which is driving is looking into the crypto or digital currencies. Again, another interesting area to look at. We all talk about cryptocurrency. Just to give you a background, cryptocurrency is a virtual currency, digital currency, where you do not have real cash, but you are using that currency, the digital currency, to pay for your services. And these cryptocurrencies are coming out of the technology called blockchain technology. And most of the financial companies are looking into that. Not only the banks or the fintech platforms are using blockchain or digital currency in their operation. In fact, central bank across the world has now ventured on into creating something called central bank digital currency. It's called CBDC. I don't know how many of you are aware, but minting a coin or printing a real physical cash of different denomination takes a lot of money, effort, and the cost to the government. So even government want to move away from it. The central bank want to move away from the real cash, and they want to park everything in terms of called the digital currency. So digital currency is going to be again the next driver, where you do not need to have the actual cash, and you might be dealing with the cryptocurrencies, and you can be dealing with the digital currencies in that. In fact, if you look into the overall ecosystem, most of the companies, whether they are traditional financial services or whether they are traditionally tech services, are now venturing into finance. Because always remember, money is the one which is driving any industry in the world. Everything what you are doing is also sake of the money. You are looking at the stock market, how it's going up and down, how your wealth is going to increase or decrease by the movement of the stock market. It's all driving your investment. It's all driving your appetite for the money. And that's why financial companies have to look into the evolving technology. And most of the time, either the bank will either collaborate with the fintech companies, or they will be looking into in-house development. So technology is going to be the driving force behind the financial services. In the early days, people who used to work in the banks might not have any knowledge. In fact, I have some of my senior colleagues who have started working in the banks, and they only use computers for some bookkeeping activities or just to look at the account features, but they have not used exhaustively for the technology. But now, if you do not have the technology background, you are going to suffer. And that's why we're talking about why fintech information, why fintech knowledge is important for the future graduates who are going to work in the financial services industry. Now, the globally, I gave you a picture, but at the same time, since we are based in Malaysia, and I believe some of my audience here will be from Malaysia, so I just want to give you some of the statistics what's happening in Malaysia. In fact, there is a prediction by the MDEC as well as other financial services providers. The total transaction value of digital payment in Malaysia is going to be around $13 billion by 2022. It's a huge amount of money. So people are going to use digital payment in the form of wallet, in the form of mobile payment, and so on. They're not going to use the cash. And that's why you can see the biggest sub-segment of fintech in Malaysia is around 36%, which is coming from payment and wallet. And the third important segment, which is the cryptocurrency. Again, recently, Luno has been given the license by the Security Commission as the first authorized digital asset exchange. So that is also growing. So look at the number of fintech startups in Malaysia. We are looking around 166 fintech startups. Again, these are in the early days, but some of them have graduated from the sandboxes of central bank, and now they are becoming a bigger force. For example, Money Match, which is a bigger force in terms of the remittance service, which you don't need a bank account to go through, that you can do the transaction over the Money Match application. So they are growing interest into that. Uh, Compared to the other segments like crowdfunding, lending, insurtech, EKYC, regulation of technology, these are the growing sectors. So those who are looking into the entrepreneurial services, if you have some great idea into these sub-segments, start watching out. These are the segments which is going to drive the financial services in the years to come, Malaysia as well as globally. Now, whenever we talk about fintech, I always get this question from many of my audience, my students, my peers, my colleagues who are teaching or doing research in that. Is bank going to die? Is fintech going to eat up the bank? That's always going to be a question. Banks have evolved in the last 200 years. The concept of money and the financial services has evolved. Bank is definitely not going to die. They are the institution. But the way we have seen the bank in the last 2-3 decades is completely going to change. And those are the banks which are keeping the pace with the technology and the digital transformation happening in the financial services are the one which are going to survive. So the second question comes, if I have the option to do a financial services activity, should I do it with bank or should I do it with the fintech platform? It's an interesting question to talk about. Whenever we come to the bank, the reason why we do our services with the bank is because we put a trust. Bank has been regulated, bank has been licensed by the central bank, which is the regulatory authority. And so far, the bank always have this insurance for the people who are putting the money, putting the faith into the bank. So those who are not aware, all of us who are having a simple saving account in Malaysia, your money is protected up to the tune of 250,000 ringgit, and that across all the world. You definitely will have a public deposit insurance scheme where your deposits are protected by the central bank in case the bank goes bankrupt, and that is what gives us a confidence in the bank. Again, we cannot keep the money in the house, right? So we have to put money somewhere else in the safekeeping, and that's why the bank come into the picture. So coming back to the second question, if the bank is so important, will the bank will remain the same, or should the people start dealing with the fintech? It all depends on your need and services. Definitely, banks have been traditionally looking into the activities which have gone into a lot of paperwork, a lot of requirement, and so on. What happens with that? People sometimes give up on the banking services. It all comes back to the user expectation and user experience, and simply putting it as a customer experience. Imagine you go to a bank where you have to spend 2 3 hours to do a simple job of 5 minutes. You will be really getting frustrated. Should I do that or shouldn't I do that? So that's the thing what is going to drive the banks. Banks are not going to die, but if the banks are going to be traditionally obsolete, definitely they are going to die. And that's why some of the banks are already facing the crunch. So bank also has to evolve with the level of technology, what's happening in the world. And there comes the fintech. So it is not going that the fintech is going to eat over all the banks, but it also has to see that how and why the fintech will become more relevant. So it's going to be that competition, and it will be going the survival of the fittest. So the banks which are going to survive are going to digitally transform themselves, are going to include the services which are more suitable, provide a better customer experience, user experience, are going to survive. But those banks which are not going to form this type of services, they are going to be eaten up by fintech platforms, and fintech is going to be relevant at the same time. I'll just give you a simple example. I'm talking about all about the user experience, right? Recently, just a month ago, there was a survey done in the UK to see that how long does it take to create an account over a fintech platform or over a normal traditional retail bank. All of you know about HSBC, right? A global banking player across the world. You all know about the Barclays, again a very known banking giant in the UK. Have you heard of Revolut? If you have not heard of Revolut, Revolut is a neobank, challenger bank. Revolut has no physical branch, but they are driving the banking saving type of account. You can do a lot of things with Revolut. You can do your payment, you can do your investment, you can have your saving account, and so on. So if as a new customer you want to go through opening a new account, how many clicks you need to open account? You can see the survey directly. You will take almost close to 100 clicks to open an account with HSBC, which can be only done by 1/4 of number of clicks, which is only 24 clicks using the Revolut channel. So why I have to disturb my finger or make my finger painful by clicking 75 times more if I have to open an account? If I also go and look into the paper-based account, if I go and give them the paper-based, HSBC will take 36 days to have an active account from a time you put down the money. But look at the Revolut. In that case, the survey says Barclays take 2 days, which is very good. But again, most of the traditional banks are taking a longer time. If you just want to test it, maybe you just next time you go and visit to a bank. At the moment, Malaysia doesn't have any virtual bank or doesn't have any neo bank or challenger bank to look into that. But you just look into opening a traditional bank account. How many days you will take? Everybody is looking for saving the time. Everybody is looking finding a parking, getting out of your normal weekday job to get things done. It is going to be really painful for people to visit a traditional bank. And that's what's happening. It's all going back to the user experience, the customer experience, how I can do the services without spending too much time online or without going into the physical operation. So that is how the things are going to look like. Now, if I look into that, banks are not slow, but again, the level of digital transformation will vary across the bank. Bigger banks have already seen this thing coming up. So if I look into the names of Citi, JP Morgan, Bank of America, Goldman Sachs, and so on. These are the ones which started very early in transforming themselves. And some of the banks have already started working on the blockchain activity, on the fintech. So some of them are doing in-house innovation on the fintech platform, or easy thing is to that go and buy out the successful fintech platform. So bank knows that if you need to survive in this sector, you need to either innovate, either to take over the fintech platform, or look into how you can transform, excuse me, how can you transform the financial services industry. Now, there's always going to be this comparison between the banks and startups. The startups I mean by the fintech platform. The reason why I call it startup, because they have just been startup. They don't have a physical activity they will be doing over the platform. So if I see that banks are really competing with the startup, but banks do have an advantage, and I will come back to it in a bit. So digital disruption is going to be the key driver of the financial services. Bank, those who are able to understand the need, those who are able to incorporate the digitization in their services and activities, they are going to look into retaining or maybe expanding the customer base. But bank, those who are nimble, those who are slow mover in this, they are going to face that. You might be surprised that we can see another round of consolidation even in the Malaysian banking industry, where some of the banks will be consolidated with other big banks, and the number of banks will remain slow. Even if the number of banks doesn't slow, the number of branches definitely will die. Why? Because people are not visiting, and to maintain a branch with number of people working there is going to be the costly affair for the bank. So what banks are doing? Banks are looking into heavily investment in the innovation. Now, earlier, bank used to look into the finance knowledge, or the finance graduate who are very good into investment, who are good into lending, who are looking into the regulation and so on. And that the technology part was not looked bank directly. They might be outsourcing it to the technology providers, or they will have another team of players who are not talking to the people upfront. So the people who are looking at the front desk, or the tellers, or the investment managers are not talking to the people how the system working. But now banks are looking for individuals who are what do you call the best match, who can understand the technology and who can also do the banking services. So again, the knowledge of technology, the amount of innovation, amount of investment in the innovation or application of technology, is that what is going to drive the banks. Banks are also looking at how to look into their own platform. So if you can see that on an average, every few months, all the existing banks are bringing some new type of features available to the banking website or the banking apps. The reason why they are doing it, because they are getting the feedback from the customer, and they again don't want to lose out in terms of how, for example, if I have a bad experience with any of the digital channel of the bank, I will say let's ditch this bank and move on, look into the other bank. So banks are looking into that. At the same time, we are looking into the startups are becoming big and big and big, and then the number of startups are coming up. So what's happening on the startup side is they are driving the customer adoption. But at the same time, I will be scared using startup until and unless they are well regulated. I don't know how many of you are aware of it, but recently we have a bigger scandal in the fintech domain. Wirecard. Wirecard was a payment platform coming out of of Germany and has a lot of customer base which just went bankrupt. It can be not only due to the fintech operation, but it also due to the auditing or the accounting aspect, where it was not audited properly and the issue was not seen in the early days of the operation. But at the same time, what we are seeing, that if I have an account with a startup which is not well regulated by the central bank or the Security and Exchange Commission of the country, I will be scared. I am not going to invest into any of the channels which are not regulated, because if I lose the money, there is no regulator for me to protect that. So that is how the industry has been driving. We are looking at the innovation, but at the same time, we have to put focus on the regulation. So regulation goes hand in hand with the innovation, and that's why bank has an advantage. Why? Because banks are already regulated. they come under the activities of the central bank. They are looked after by the finance department, finance ministry of the country. So they are being well protected, because if you have a banking collapse of one particular bank in the country, it can be domino effect, which can lead to further disruption of the financial stability in the country. So one thing which gives me importance is the regulation, and that is the area where startups are not up to the mark at the moment, but that's not going to be too difficult. Most of central banks have ventured out into looking at the regulation of the fintech. And I will leave that topic for another discussion for some time later, because regulation for fintech is another topic on its own. Now, how the industry will shape. I talked about the future of financial services, right? If you can see, this particular slide is going to be the marriage of the best. The marriage of the best means the marriage of the platform plus the marriage of the traditional banking services. And what are the advantages each of these bring to the market? Each of these bring to the customer. So if I look into the pros and cons of these two individual entities, traditional banks as well as the fintech startup. Traditional banks have a huge capital and have a huge customer trust base, because people have been always putting a trust, faith in the bank, as for the reason I mentioned earlier. But what are the things lacking in the bank? They do not have too much focus being given to the user experience. They are very slow to move into that. They believe that irrespective of how do we operate, customer will still come back to us. But that was the earlier days where you cannot do anything without the banks. But at the same time, if you look into the fintech companies, they have the digitization, they have the digital power. Everything is being done is either using the machine learning, using the big data, artificial intelligence, cloud computing, blockchain, and so on. You can name so many. So they have the digital power. They are always innovative. They are always bringing the best out of innovation. They look at the data of the customer, they get the feedback, and they try to innovate, come up with the new features. So they are agile and they are innovative. And but what is their cons? Their cons is that they do not have capital. They always depend on the capital coming from the venture capitalist. Venture capitalist segment is again also limited. So you have to fight for that pie. Every other industry is looking for venture capitalists to invest into that. So the capital is lacking there. So what happens in terms of that? They have less capital. Again, the important thing is the trust, which I mentioned to you earlier. The regulation, which is going to be slow, is going to put a lot of importance on the trust. If I do not have a trust, I might not adopt it. Some people might adopt it thinking that, okay, so far so good if they are doing good service. But if they collapse, what will happen then? So if I combine the first two part of the slide, if you see that, we can look into the benefit, the pros and cons of both traditional banks and the innovative fintech platform, and we can come up with a digitally transformed financial institution or fintech powered financial institution, which has the innovation coming from digitization, which has the capital and customer trust. So the future of the financial services will lie in the segment where the banks and the fintechs are working together. And in order to do that, you need to also have how the graduates who are going to work in industry is going to look into that. I think I can talk a lot about this thing about fintech and financial institution, but it's always good to see the area of collaboration. Banks should not compete with fintech. Banks should collaborate with fintech. It's about going to be the best of the marriage if they are going to collaborate. As I mentioned in the previous slide, the collaboration in terms of technology, innovation, plus the customer base and the capital base is going to drive the future of the financial services. A simple example is bank is already looking into the R3 application, which is a consortium of 40 banks, and they're looking into the blockchain, where might be looking into the money transfer using blockchain technology. You have heard about the SWIFT, where the banks globally transact with each other in terms of the transfer of money from Malaysia to US and vice versa. So now they're looking at a technology which is going to be transparent based on a blockchain, on a distributed ledger technology, which is going to drive the borderless transaction, borderless money transfer from one part of the world to another. So they are, because some of the technology is not going to be cheap, and one bank cannot invest on alone. So sometimes you need to come up with the consortium of bank, and this is R3, which is the application. We look at the many of the big names you can see from the slide here, all the way from Bank of America, Citi, Goldman Sachs, HSBC, and so on. So, what is the way forward for financial institution? Collaborate, closely work with the fintech industry. Second, invest into the fintech industry. Look into the innovation. Look into how to reskill the workforce. Another this thing is very important. Some of the people who are working in the banks, who might be still have 15, 20 years to go in the bank, they need to reskill their existing workforce. Why? Because these people, when they graduated, nobody even heard about fintech. Nobody heard about digital transformation. Nobody heard about blockchain. So again, banks need to look into reskilling the workforce, look into innovation in-house, out of the box, and they also need to acquire. So the way forward for the banks or the financial institution services are looking into how they move on. So the key message here is that they need to work and they need to leverage on the fintech. They cannot hide away from fintech. They cannot be scared of fintech. It has to be a partnership. It has to be a very successful marriage between the banks and the fintech platform. This is just a ecosystem. As I mentioned to you, we have more than 12,000 platforms. But if you look into that, every area, robo advisory, regulation of technology, digital banking, payment, alternative finance, insurance tech, blockchain, digital identity verification, eKYC, and so on, is the area of fintech, and you have so many players in that. And this is why the people are putting a faith. Why? Because there are a lot of development happening in this landscape on the fintech side. Now, we always talk about the celebrity, the models, the actors who are driving the entertainment industry. The same goes to the fintech. They are called influencer. Influencer are the one who are driving what's happening in the fintech. How banks should be able to change, what banks should be looking at innovation, how they can digitally transform. So the influencers are talking about it, researching about the topic, and passing on the message to the user as well as to the institution. So these days, bank cannot only look at their own in-house expert, or they cannot only look into their own leadership. They have to go beyond their own organization, and they have to listen to the influencer who are driving the discussion, the forum, because these influencers are not only looking from the organizational perspective, but also looking from the user perspective. A lot of data is being collected. A lot of analysis is being done, and we always see this is coming up. Just to add on to you, I also belong to that part of the group, and that's why I can understand. I'm one of the top 100 influencers in the world by the Refinitiv. Refinitiv is the data arm of Thomson Reuters, if you have heard of it. And globally, I'm ranked 97, and the only one from Malaysia and only 3 from Asia Pacific. So I can see what's happening in the industry, and I'm driving that discussion within the region. I work very closely with the regulators in the country and talking to the banking expert and see how the banking sector can be transformed in that. So again, working with APU, having this expertise in this knowledge, we are looking at how we are driving the financial services. Not only that, regulation is very close to my heart, and I'm the one of the top 4 in the world when it comes to the regulation of technology, the RegTech, by the Planet Compliance, and I always feature within the top 5 of their weekly rankings. And I'm driving the discussion on why it should be regulated, how the users like me and people like you who are listening to me can be protected when they are dealing with the fintech platforms. I also work with a think tank group at the Dutch Business School at the Cambridge, and where we have the experts from all over the world, all the research affiliates, and we do global studies. If you go to the Cambridge Center for Alternative Finance and look for the reports which are publicly available free of cost, you can see the studies which we have done, how fintech alternative finance is going to transform the financial services industry. The reason why I'm telling you is all that because it's important to see who is driving the fintech landscape in Malaysia, in the region, globally, and what it can be bring. That's why when we talk about fintech, when we talk about the finance education, You need to look about where you can get the best knowledge. There can be many universities who say that, yeah, we know about fintech, we have a module in fintech, but do they have an expert? APU has that advantage. As I mentioned to you, I'm the only Malaysian in the top 100 of the fintech influencer, only top three from the Asia Pacific, and having the wide experience in that, I can see how APU can leverage on that, how APU education in the area of fintech and finance and accounting can be transformed. So if those parents and the students who are looking to learn from the best in the financial area, how they're going to be transformed in the future to come, you should be learning from the best, and you should be looking forward to join APU. Now, I talked a lot about financial area, and some of the people who might be looking at a career in the accounting will be thinking that they might be left out. No, not really at all. I'm going to going to talk a bit about how even accounting sector is getting transformed. Accounting has been very traditionally look at the bookkeeping, creating your balance sheet, and looking into filing your financial information, looking into your taxes, and so on. Now even the accounting jobs, accounting advisory services have completely changed. It has been looking into the implication, the application of the digitization within the accounting sector. It's not going to be very traditional. You don't have to look at the bulk of documents, all your invoices, all your revenue or expenses receipt to come onto that. It's all coming into how the accounting challenges are being change with the advent of the technology. We are looking into compliance reporting. You don't have to work compliance reporting on standalone. You can look at the best practices using cloud computing. All the data can be on cloud, and the different stakeholders within that, whether it can be tax authorities, whether it can be regulators, all of them can access the information and can give you the thing. You can also look into the forecasting based on the current level of the accounting information in the company. You can use that information to predict, to forecast, and there where the application of AI, the big data, machine learning comes into that. That's not only to the finance, it's also to the accounting. Is the company going to survive in the next 5 years, and so on? Whether, for example, recently we talked about the Air Asia shares was stopped trading for half a day because the ENY, the auditor, predicted that they're not in a good financial health. Now this is coming from forecasting. How did they come up with this analysis? It's all based on the information available. Where the information is coming from, all the information which is coming from the annual reports, coming from their data, what they are saving, that due to the COVID, the operation have slowed down, they have less revenue, and so on. So all is going in. For example, tax advisory. You are looking at a tax advisory, not using only the traditional document. Imagine if you have to look into thousands of pages to find out the information about how you're going to put your tax report to the regulator. You're going to die. So people are moving away. You are using data. You are using technology. All the reporting, for example, it's the integrated reporting, whether it is the financial reporting, everything is using the data and technology. So accountants are also getting transformed. They will be tech savvy. They will be looking at digitization of their activities. So in the nutshell, the whole accounting services and the financial services are going to see that how technology is going to shape them with the technology and so on. Coming back to the jobs, you must be wondering what are the big jobs going to look into that. The big jobs will be in data analysis and scientists, AI and machine learning specialists. Even though you can see that these are going to be the tech ones, but these people are going to also work into the financial world. Now you cannot completely teach two type of subject domain to one graduate. Either you will specialize in finance, or either you will specialize in technology. And that's where the fintech comes in. When we are teaching fintech to the students, we are not only looking at financial services or accounting services. We are also giving you the technology. So what is the role of big data? What are the implication of machine learning? What is the deep learning? How AI is going to we even teach you coding, for example, in terms of Python, of how you can look into the decision making, predictive analytics using that. So those were the days which you are going to be completely working in only one job scope. The people who are losing the job right now are the people who are redundant because they were only focused on one type of job. in order to survive. And I can tell you, please mind my word, if you are not a multitasking employee in the future, in any times of crisis, whether it's COVID-19 or COVID-25, whatever you call it, you are going to lose job if you're not multitasking. And technology and the knowledge of fintech is the one which is going to drive your job aspect into the financial services industry. Clerks, accounting, bookkeeping, accountants, and auditors all are going to be outdated. They are going to be outdated in traditional way. So what is happening? They are getting transformed. You are looking into the job services which are using the technology. So understanding technology, applying this technology into the traditional financial services job, into the accounting jobs, into the auditing job, that is what is going to survive. So please do not stay away from the technology, and don't be scared. The technology doesn't mean you're going to be a programmer, you need to know a lot of about computing and so on. No, you are looking the basic and you are looking at the application. So the key concept is that you should know the fundamentals of technology and how those technology can be applied towards the financial services industry. And that is why, as the educator, as the provider of the education, APU has gone into that. APU, as Luke mentioned earlier, and as the head of school, I am looking forward to that. We are the first university in the country to look into the undergraduate program of the fintech. We are also the first university in the country, and maybe one or two only in the region, who recently launched the master's program. So people who are already working and now they want to upskill, they should look forward for the masters in finance with fintech specialism. That's again going to be the upskilling of the people who already work in the job market. We are also the first university who have looked into the partnership with Fintech Association of Malaysia. We are not looking at one or two companies to partner with. We are looking at the partnering with the whole association. The purpose is that bring the best people who can look into our curriculum, give us the feedback, and then we adapt. We are also looking at the association where our graduates can do the internship and they can look forward for the jobs. So this type of partnership is needed, where the university is working closely with the biggest name in the industry, and that's what the aspiration of the School of Accounting and Finance and the Asia Pacific University. So sometimes make a wise decision, see what you have to learn. The whole purpose of my talk is not only talking about APU. I give you the overview of the program, why fintech is important, what you should do, what you need to learn to be make relevant for the financial services industry. And if you understand that, you should look for the right provider of education which will train you that. And unfortunately, sorry to say, none of the universities in the country are looking into that. And that is what it differentiates. So decision is yours, choice is yours. If you want to be relevant in the job market, if you want to be more sought after in the job market with the right skill, look for the right place, and APU will be the right place for you to do if you're looking into the career in financial services industry. I think I have 5 minutes, but let me go through the details here. We have a bachelor's program in accounting and finance, and some of the key things which we teach, for example, like forensic accounting. I mentioned about the wire card earlier. Forensic accounting is becoming a norm. If you need to identify the problem of the companies from the beginning, you need to look into the, are they involved into fraudulent activities, what will be the image of the company if they go over. So auditor also need to be well aware. And how does the technology come into play? You are looking into the big data, you are looking into the machine learning, and that will come up with some type of decision making, predictive analytics. So again, embedding the knowledge of the fintech within that. Taxation, forex and investment, internal audit, these are for our accounting side. While on the banking side, if you can see that we do have a traditional banking and finance, but we are also looking into the program of the fintech. That is the one which is going to drive. You are going to look into the fintech. Your knowledge of fintech is going to be very important. And not only that, we are not only looking at just one module, we're looking at the overall program, which looks into the different aspect of the fintech module, for example. I mentioned to you earlier, we have master's program in accounting and finance, but recently we also launched in the specialism in the fintech. We also have PhD in finance, and those who are looking into the new areas, innovation, research into the fintech. This is where you can come into the play and do your PhD in finance and see what are the areas. Regulation in financial technology is going to be one of the driving forces. So try to look for those people who are maybe senior with us in the discussion right now. See where you can come up with, do a research and do your PhD in fintech area, for example. Uh, I always call our program at APU is powered by the fintech. What I have done as the school and as the university, what APU has done, we have looked into embedding fintech fundamentals across all programs. So whichever channel you are coming from, if you are coming from diploma, you also know about fundamentals of fintech. If you are doing your accounting and finance program, we still take you through the journey of fintech. Definitely, if you're doing bachelor in banking and finance, fintech is the key word out there. Plus, if you're looking for a career progression, you are looking for progression into a master, higher degree of knowledge, we also have a master's program. So you can see that fintech is embedded across all the programs, and that knowledge is important if you are going to be make yourself relevant in the job market. So if I just quickly go through what are the things which you're going to learn in the fintech module, you will learn about the basic about the fintech. Some of the things I talked about it earlier in a summarized form, but you will get into details. You will be also looking at how fintechs are enabled. What are the things you need? So you will be learning about Python, for example. You will be doing some type of coding which is only to be used in the financial services industry. You'll be looking into big data mining, predictive modeling using the machine learning. And the key thing about here is that these modules will be taught with the collaboration of School of Computing. And all of you know that APU is known for School of Computing and Technology. So where the best people can teach you data mining and predictive modeling and its application in the financial services. Again, APU. So you have to look into that. We will be learning about digital currencies, blockchain technology. These are the areas which is looking across the whole fintech domain, which we just talked about in the last 1 hour and so. And not only that, you also looking into robo advisory. For example, you will be having hands-on working with the robo advisory software where you will be doing keying in the data and looking in the decision-making criteria. How do you advise your client and so on? So these are the roles, the jobs which are going to happen in the financial services industry. And that's why we were the early mover. We have understood the need, especially the reason why we are the early mover, because working closely with the industry, we understand that these are the jobs which are going to come in the market. So we were not slow mover. We were the first mover in the market, in the region, in the country, where we are looking into the fintech program. And these are the modules which you are going to learn within the fintech program across different levels. So you will have in a master's program also, you will be learning about big data, and which I have not mentioned here. We will talk also about the governance and compliance, as I mentioned to you earlier, about the regulation and so on. So these are the relevant skills which you will be learning in IR 4.0. In the fintech specialism, you will be using Python technology. So gone were the days when the Python was only learned by the tech people or the computing people. No, as a finance graduate, you need to learn language. You need to learn coding. But these codings are not too difficult. These codings are designed in a way where you can able to some type of predictive modeling, make some type of decision making, and it's going to help the financial and advisory services. Again, I mentioned to you earlier, we have advantage. Why we have advantage? We are the first university to sign with FOM. If you don't know about FOM, FOM is the Fintech Association of Malaysia, having more than 100 members, which include all the bigger banks, all the fintech platforms, the key ones, the major ones. And the president of the Fintech Association of Malaysia is our advisory board member. So he is looking at our curriculum. He understands what is driving the market. And based on that advice, the industry advisory board members, we look into our programs, we look into our revising the content and make it more industry relevant. This is some of the snapshot which we had. This is just before the MCO. We were lucky to sign the pact before the MCO, and that's why we can do it in a physical manner. This was happened in the first week of March. So look out for those more spaces on APU, what we are doing, and we promise you this is not the end. This is just the beginning. What type of collaboration and partnership we are doing with in the area. We're also working with a robo advisory firm, Pentype, who will be providing a solution and software for the robo advisory software. They are the homegrown Malaysian Penang-based company which are looking into the AI and the robo advisory, robo investment, and so on. So they will be looking into this, and again, we will be the front leaders to work with them, and we will be using their softwares in our application. Uh, we regularly conduct fintech talks from the key industry players, so students are all aware of what's happening on the fintech landscape. We also conduct a lot of public webinars and seminars on that. So watch out for the space. Knowledge is everywhere; it's abundant. So those who are also not able to join us, or those who have already graduated, please look out for the space. Those who are parents, you can also learn about fintech going through these things. So again, Inchik Ridwan, who is the president, gave us a talk on 2nd of March talking about how the action plan. Inchik Ridwan works very closely with the MDEC, works very closely with the Labuan, and he is also the country director of World Remit. So he himself brings a lot of expertise to our table. That's from all from me, and I will just conclude with one thing. You, the companies, the graduates, the parents, all should look forward to harness fintech for finance. My credentials are down there. My email is there. You can follow me on Twitter if you want to be aware of what's happening in the fintech space. You can read my work on the ResearchGate, and you can also follow me on LinkedIn, where I will be sharing articles on the fintech. That's all for me, and I hope you have a good session. I will be open to any question if there is one coming from that. That's all for me, Lung.
All right, thank you. Wow, very informative. So, if let's say anyone have any questions, feel free to drop down your questions at our comment area. So, Dr. Hafiz, I would like to ask because since everyone's talking about fintech now, do you think how Malaysia prepare how prepared are we in terms of to adapt into fintech?
That's a good question because we are looking at the readiness, adaptiveness of the Malaysia as well. In fact, only last week, APU had a meeting with MDEC, Vice President of FinTech, and we were talking about this landscape. What's happening in Malaysia that there are a lot of players, but unfortunately, we do not have big players which are homegrown. So the landscape is emerging. There is a need. People are looking forward for more. And I mentioned to you the amount of digital payment will go more than 1 trillion, 1.3 billion for Malaysia. Number of startups are there. But we also need a big push coming from the central bank. We need to have a get push coming from Security Commission, and also the awareness. So what is lacking in Malaysia is the awareness about the fintech platform, lacking
Mhm.
about the knowledge, the information. So definitely there is a lot of opportunity, and Malaysia is going to be the forefront of the innovation in the region in the next few years. No?
All right. So then in that case, I would say in Malaysia definitely have more career opportunity for the students after graduate.
Definitely.
Yep. Okay. So I have one. The audience over here is actually asking. Uh, all right, Muhammad Ali. How about the security aspect in fintech? With growing number of cyber attack, is it really secure to depend on fintech now?
This is an interesting question. The more and more we get dependent on technology, the vulnerability of technology is also going to increase. So even without fintech or not, even the banks always have this issue of cyber attacks, malware attack. In fact, one time there was a central bank of Bangladesh which got hacked. So even central bank having the best security features can be hacked by the users. So when we deal with technology, we need to be always aware that the technology should be soundproof. It's going to protect the users using the technology. So irrespective whether there is fintech or whether it's not fintech, cyber security is going to be always the key. And understand regulation, the security, and how to protect users as well as the institution, that will be important now. So a lot of investment is being done on the regulation of technology. A lot of investment has been done to make the system soundproof, and definitely with the experience, it's getting more and more secured now.
Okay. Oh, so Muhammad Ali, I hope you actually get your answer for your questions. So we have Amiza Haiwan. Is fintech a mode of bridging social change?
Yes, I will say yes because people behavior are changing. Uh, as I mentioned in my presentation earlier, there is a behavioral change in the user of fintech. For example, last time you can only borrow money from banks, right? Now you can even look into the crowdfunding. You can look at the P2P financing. So people are now becoming investors on another people project. You don't have to go to the banks only to depend that. At the same time, people are bringing fintech is bringing financial inclusion. So the main concept of fintech is to make sure that the financial services is available to everyone. So earlier, banks could have left people who are poor, people who are working in the remote area, or who are staying in remote area might not be captured by the traditional banking institution. But now with fintech, if you have access to mobile, if you have access to internet, you can get all the services which you need, and that can increase the behavioral change in the. You can be entrepreneur, you can get easy money, or you can have different alternative finance channels to get the money, and that's why there will be a big change coming into society as well.
Okay, thank you. So we have another one, Regine. What skill do we need for fintech?
I mentioned earlier, it has to be a combination of technology and the sound knowledge of financial services. Uh, uh, when I mentioned about the career aspects or how financial services is getting transformed, we are not foregoing the traditional knowledge about corporate finance. We're not foregoing about portfolio management, investment, accounting, internal audit, and so on. The key concept of the financial industry has to be there, but at the same time you need to know how does the technology will enhance these services. So knowledge of the technology, knowledge of the machine learning, deep learning, big data, artificial intelligence, data analytics, these are the key which is going to drive the skill set of the financial graduate, and they will be able to adapt into the fintech job scope.
Okay, all right. So I believe this one is a student. If I were to do fintech with a year abroad, is that possible? Which university overseas have this fintech course, and is APU partner with them?
That's why we said APU is the first one, because there are not many university in the country or in the region which are doing. At the moment, we are and Tian, you should understand that it's not about you are looking at get going abroad just for the cultural experience or the country experience. You should also know that whether there is a capability to understand or to offer these type of program. Definitely, there are programs at master's level in Singapore, in Australia, for example. In some UK universities, they are slowly emerging out of this. At the moment, APU has not partnered with them because not all of them have as exhaustive program what we have. So we are looking for partners who can come and join with APU, and we will be able to help them. So you don't have to go anywhere. Study with us at APU, and you get the best of the knowledge.
All right. So I believe many students will be asking, because in APU we actually offer two different type of fintech program over here. One is under the IT school, another one under banking and finance. Could you please tell them what is the difference between these two?
Definitely, I think sometimes the students and parents might get confused over that. When we learn about fintech in the School of Account, that is the right program to talk about, because that's talking about financial services with the technology. So you are learning about the overall ecosystem of the financial services, including banking, finance, accounting, and so on. But your skill set is getting upgraded, or you are knowing about the technology. If you're looking on the fintech in the technology side, you are looking at more on the technology side in terms of which it will be the driver of the fintech. You don't learn more about financial services. You learn more about the technology which are supplementing the activities like cybersecurity, as we talked about earlier. Now, in order to protect any malware attack or ransomware attack or hacking for the banks, what type of security mechanism will be there? What type of programming need to be done? These will be taught into onto the technology side. So technology is more looking into the programming, which is going to supplement the financial services. So you are looking at a job which will be back end, providing support to technology service. But you are looking at the fintech in the School of Accounting and Finance. You are looking at the front end where you are dealing with the customers. You are looking at the financial services which are being sold and offered, and how do you advise the people who are going to invest money into financial services. So difference is front end and back end, Long.
Okay, cool. All right. So we have Mr. Raymond here. Who is Superchargers and what is the benefit student can get from it?
Okay, Supercharger was one of the companies under the umbrella of MDEC last time, and that was the time when MDEC involved Supercharger and APU together because the supercharger wanted to work with the university, and MDEC proposed APU name, and we were working together on developing the program. But unfortunately, after some time, Supercharger is a Singaporean-based company. They have operation in different part of the world. They are looking into the fintech scape. At the moment, we are more working closely with the Fintech Association of Malaysia. And as I mentioned, Supercharger is only one of the component of Fintech Association of Malaysia. But now we have over 100 institutions who are part of the Fintech Association of Malaysia, and you will get the benefit of working as an intern with those institutions. You're also going to listen to the industry speakers throughout your program, and you might be also working with them after your graduation. So we are not only looking at one company like Supercharger, we are looking over 100 companies like Supercharger in the association.
Okay. Wow, Dr. Nafis, seems like you have going to have a new students coming in. I was planning to take fintech for my degree in September this year. So, Kelly, if let's say you have any question, feel free to come and ask us. But I understand that yes, now the study abroad actually is one of the questions that you asked. So, okay, our time actually is overshoot. So, if let's say anyone have more questions, always welcome for you to come and visit APU. We have open day on today and also tomorrow. So, always welcome to come and visit our campus at from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. So, thank you, Dr. Nafis, for your sharing. So,
Thank you,
remember,
John.
yep. Remember, tomorrow same time, 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. Malaysia time, we have another session with the topic of digital marketing, your social media footprint. All right, stay tuned and follow our Facebook page for more updates. So once again, visit APU Open Day today and tomorrow, 11 and 12 July from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. So thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
everyone. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.